At first, I'd like to share with you some of the latest evidence for STAD, the screening test for Aphasia Dysarthria, from the Academy of Aphasia conference held in Macau in 2019. This chapter will demonstrate why you can use STAD in your clinical practice with confidence as an evidence-based screening test. Please take a look. Here is my profile. Accuracy of STAD. First and foremost, the accuracy for detecting aphasia in the STAD verbal section is within acceptable range. This is due to the high sensitivity and specificity which represent the accuracy of the test. For example, here is a report from 2019 AOA conference in Macau. The photo shows scenes from the presentation at the conference. It was indeed a wonderful conference set in a beautiful city where there is a lot of vast and luxury architecture. By the way, the graph displays the result of the STAD verbal test conducted in 222 healthy elderly adults. The histogram shows higher STAD scores on the right and higher number of people on the top. Can you see the bias toward higher scores of the right side? Most of the 188 healthy cases scored a perfect 16 point. 21 scored 15, and only a few scored 14 or less. Next, 93 patients with aphasia cases are overlaid in blue on the same graph. The distribution of aphasia cases in blue is clearly different from that of healthy cases, spreading from the high to low scores. The accuracy of the STAD verbal test, which distinguishing between aphasia cases depicted in blue and healthy cases shown in orange, was good, achieving a sensitivity of 92% and specificity of 94% when the cutoff score was set at 14 points. It compares favorably with the world's leading language disorder screenings. The following shows each test accuracy as sensitivity and specificity of percent. Last, US, fast, and mast. From the comparison with last, US, fast, and mast, we can say that STAD is a valid tool for aphasia screening. The STAD is now a truly dependable test in Japan that is supported with evidence. From now on, we will focus on developing an English version of the test as well. Components of STAD. The language examination of STAD consists of 7 items. There are naming, obey the command, repetition, counting, object naming, name writing, and dictation. Moving forward, we will explain the implementation method and key points for evaluation. Today, I'll explain how to screen for aphasia severity with only one question. Let's classify mild, moderate, and severe through STAD name speech. Get straight to the point at first. Mild aphasia can say their first and last name. Second, moderate aphasia cannot say but can understand. Third, severe aphasia can neither say nor understand. I'm happy to help you estimate the severity of your aphasia. Please take a look. Enforcement and scoring of STAD name speech is following. Ask for the patient's name, then if the patient cannot say it, see if the patient can correctly indicate a no and yes response. There are 3 patterns of patient responses. First, can say their name. Second, cannot say but can give a yes-no response. Third, unable to say and unable to make a yes-no response. This test will give us a rough estimate of mild, moderate, and severe. The graph shows the STAD verbal test of 45 patients in acute phase in order of highest to lowest correct response rate. The left side of the graph is easier question in terms of difficulty because most patients can answer it correctly, which means that it is useful screener for severe aphasia. On the other hand, it is a challenging question because few people can answer the right side of the graph correctly. Well, it means it is useful screening for mild disease and ruling out aphasia. By varying the difficulty level in this way, the test can be used for screening for severe to mild aphasia. That is what I devised when I developed this STAD. The percentage of correct responses for the name speech item is 69%, which is intermediate. In other words, mild aphasia can say, but moderate to severe aphasia cannot say. If the patient cannot say the name with STAD, we look to see if the patient can correctly respond no or yes. It is a good indicator of severe or moderate aphasia. Are you Edward? No. Are you Araki? Yes. Cannot say name but can indicate yes no correctly. This response is often seen in the moderate level. Here is review of STAD name speech. First, can say name equal no or mild aphasia. Second, cannot say but can make yes no response equal moderate. Third, unable to say and unable to yes no response equal severe. Of course, it is only one question. Please use it only as a rough guide, but I'd be happy to help you estimate the severity of disease through STAD name speech. I'm afraid my horrible pronunciation, but thank you very much for watching this far. For listening comprehension screening, the obey the command method is an excellent indication of the ability to understand instructions. It's because no tools are needed and it can simply be held anywhere. Listening comprehension screening is incredibly versatile and adaptable. Now, let's take a closer look. In obey the command, a score is given to the ability of the patient to perform certain movements based on the instruction from a speech pathologist. There are 3 questions in STAD. First, close your eyes. Second, touch your ears. Third, open and close your hands repeatedly. Remember, tools and items are not involved in any of these. For instance, if you ask the patient to point at picture cards, you need a picture card. But with STAD, an item is not needed for instructions as no item operations are involved. The intake interview is expected not only in the SLP's room, but also the bedside and in the day room. It's not bothersome to carry a heavy bag with you every time you head to the ward for screening. That's when we need the desirable mobility of the STAD obey command, because no tools, no items are needed. The graph shows a language test of 45 patients in the acute phase descending over the correct answer rate. The red bar are the 3 questions of obey the command. While the difficulty ranges from 96% to 69%, we witness that they tend to appear on the left-hand side of the overall chart. The leftmost one is instruction action number 1, close your eyes. The correct answer rate is 96%. Almost all subjects got it right, meaning it's a super easy question. That's to say, aphasia patients who made a mistake here are very severe case. It has a counter value. In other words, even in severe case where the RAB Western aphasia ability is difficult, we could determine what the patient can do through this method. Let's keep it in mind. In summary, STAD obey the command is very much versatile and adaptable. It's applicable in different scenes. No tools are needed. It can be performed anywhere. Please utilize it for the listening comprehension screening for patients. Thank you for listening. Hello SLPs, I'm Araki, a STAD developer. STAD repetitions are effective in screening severe cases. That's because they are just easy questions on word level. For moderate to mild cases, all 3 questions can be settled. A failure here that suggests a severe degree. A deeper understanding to STAD repetition definitely makes screening much easier. Sincerely, I hope it will be useful for aphasia screening. Now take a closer look. Repetition is what the speech pathologist says. Scores are given to patients based on whether they can mimic and repeat. All STAD repetitions are on word level. Apple, 2 syllable, telephone, 3 syllable, magnifying glass, 5 syllables. Generally speaking, for both English and Japanese, there are 2 factors to determine the difficulty of the repetition of words: word length and familiarity. Familiarity for STAD repetition is just the same. Still, it depends on the change in word length. The correct answer rate according to the word length is shown by 45 acute cases. In the graph, the red bar indicates the 3 repetition items. Let me make a remark. Word length in Japanese refers to the number of molar instead of the number of syllables. Correct answer rate are as follows: mi, 2 molar units, literally C in English, 80%. Tamago, 3 molar units, literally egg, 73%. Tebukuro, 4 molar units, literally gloves, 71%. Basically, all 3 items appears on the left. They concentrate on those easy questions. Since all 3 items are easy questions, we can assume that patients who fail here are severe. In the graph, umi appears as the second item on the left. Even those severe cases fail in verb are able to provide a correct answer here. Let's bear in mind, I've got a question from my student. Why the short sentences and long sentences excluded in STAD repetitions? Thank you very much for such a question indeed. Up to this moment, I'm still convinced that staying on the word level is the best for STAD repetition. The reason is emphasis on the flow of the screening. The difficulty of STAD is generally starting with something easy, and it gets more and more difficult towards the end. It's because it's better for flow of the screening. All Wechsler IQ tests are structured in this way that they are from easy questions to difficult ones. For example, in the questions about the difference between 2 words, first of all, what's the common point between apple and orange? And the end, what do absolutism and autocracy have in common? And exit criteria apply when the answers for several continuous questions are incorrect. We are able to apply this criteria on the premise that questions are getting more and more difficult. The flow is like it's easy in the first half, then difficult in the second half. It's very common in different kinds of tests, isn't it? And now let's take a look at the graph of the correct answer rate of STAD. The graph is correct answer rate based on the sequence of questions. Red bars are repetitions. As it's easy at the beginning and difficult at the end in general, we can see that repetition indicates in the red bar actually appear in the first half. In other words, from the angle of question sequence of the test, we can see that easier is for severe. In the middle is for moderate, latter is for mild. Screening for different severity degree is then implemented throughout the test. In order to create such a flow, keeping the repetition in the first half on the word level is, we think, the best way. In summary, STAD repetitions are easy on the word level, help us to spot out severe cases effectively. For moderate mild cases, patients can work out all 3 questions, so we are able to see which cases are severe here. If you understand why things are all structured on word level, you are able to utilize STAD in a much easier way. I would be glad if the finding is useful in aphasia screening. Well, Number counting is super easy. That's just counting from 1 to 10, right? For those of you who think so, unfortunately you are tremendously lowering the accuracy of speech screening. Number counting is adopted in many internationally famous screenings. For example, MAST, Mississippi Aphasia Screening Test from US, LAST, Language Screening Test from France. Both tests include number counting. The speeches we can acquire from number counting allows us to analyze a huge amount of information indeed. That's also related to speech training we are going to touch on later. Now let's take a closer look. Here is my profile. There are two purposes to do number counting. First, the quantitative screening of aphasia, and second, the qualitative screening of speeches. For first quantitative screening, as mentioned in the thesis, aphasia blocks out a lot of possibilities. For second qualitative screening, patients of severe have difficulty making spontaneous speech. In that case, we can make use of sequence words, weekends, numbers, and alphabets to enhance the speeches. It's because sequence words move on automatically. It is a gap between voluntariness and automaticity, very much common in higher brain dysfunction. When compared with other STAD questions, number counting is a group of systematic words in which we can observe quite a lot in terms of speech modality. 5 findings about number counting. Number 1. Speech apraxia. I strongly believe that we can easily spot speech apraxia in number counting because patients of moderate to severe broken aphasia and global aphasia with speech apraxia can hardly give out speeches. However, from the speeches stemmed from number counting, we are very easily able to observe unconscious articulation structure and the movements of lips and tongue. 5 findings of number 2. Word finding difficulty. If patients with severe aphasia struggle with counting numbers, an SLP can guide them by saying, let's say 1, 2, and 3 together. Often, once patient can say even part of 1, 2, 3, they are close to being able to repeat vowels, semi-vowels, and even greetings. Sometimes, this can lead to patient being able to say good morning for the first time in the therapy. This progress can be incredibly motivating indeed. 5 findings about number counting of number 3 dysarthria. Sound distortion is acceptable in scoring scheme as its language test, yet sound distribution may suggest dysarthria. 5 findings of number 4 loss of initiative. Loss of initiative refers to low level of consciousness and severe dementia. The patient won't show any responses even with assistance. Number 5 other findings. Perseverate, decrease in volume, hoarseness, and so on. In summary, there were 2 purposes for STAD number counting. First, quantitative screening of aphasia. Second, the qualitative screening for speeches. As for the 5 major findings in number counting, we have looked at first speech apraxia, second word finding difficulty, and third dysarthria, fourth loss of initiative, and 5 other findings. Utilizing these findings of number counting can definitely improve speech screening accuracy. Let's link this up with the speech training in the next stage. We're willing to share STAD for free of charge. Let's get it from STAD website. Naming screening is easy to prepare, isn't it? It's just all the same with picture, cards, photos, and objects, right? For those who think in this way, be aware of the scales to be fallen through from your eyes. This time, we are going to take a deep look at STAD naming. Get straight to the point at first. Object naming is the best screening for word-finding difficulties. Objects all have obvious visions. As visibility is good, the possibility of having false positive due to manual mistakes is greatly reduced. This video is about naming screening, which is highly accurate that it hardly brings false positive. Now take a closer look. Naming is in fact a crucial screening for aphasia. We can spot our patient with difficulties finding the right words, which is actually a symptom of aphasia. Categorization of classic aphasia syndromes depends on good and bad on the three aspects: fluency, listening comprehension, and repetition. So, if a patient good in all three aspects, the patient is not all okay, but actually anomic aphasia. As a premise of categorization in classical aphasia syndrome, having difficulties in finding words to varying degrees is the core symptom seen in all aphasia patients. Hence, researchers around the world tend to look at whether the patient have word-finding difficulties in naming object as a screening for aphasia. Now let's take a look at comparison between some screening methods around the world. When we compare the 5 representative screening methods upheld by Salter 2006, there are ones with questions about naming screening with questions about naming include last, mast, fast, UAS. The screening method without question about naming is screening. 80% and researchers have adopted it. Here, we witness that naming is very important in screening for aphasia. Let me make a remark. In screening, names were not included probably because the primary purpose of screening is not spot out aphasia but to screen semantic, phonology, and grammar. So, how does STAD contribute to spot out word-find difficulties? Development process provided that naming object is optimal. This is because objects all have obvious visions that visibility is good. Previous reports have been focused on the naming of cars with aligned drawings, black and white in color, and photos full colors. However, there is a problem in the identification of object that bring about false positivity, as pictorial information sometimes could be difficult to understand. In the case when hospital deal with acute case with sudden onset, patient might say, "It's my presbyopia and I don't have my reading glasses. I left them at home." And it turned out that they can't see picture cards at all. The patient might simply has unilateral spatial neglect when they say, "I have no clue." You have no ideas whether they say so because they can't see what on the left, or they really have difficulty finding in the right words. We have to all in all consider the possibility that patients make mistakes for the low visibility. Technically, it's called double-bubbled question. Through this research, we've come to know that it is vitally important to minimize the mistakes generated by non-aphasia conditions. The idea of using objects with good visibility tremendously reduced false positive brought about by visual mistakes. Considering the above, object naming is no doubtly the best and most accurate naming screening. But still, you know, Mr. Araki, it's a pain to prepare different objects. I don't want to carry those items all the way. Totally understood. It's natural to think so. Yet, let's take a look at the naming of those objects included instead. First, pen. Is it something you have with yourself all the time? Second, toothbrush. Let's put one at SLP's room. If the screening is to be carried by bedside, your patient may have one. Third, thermometer. You can use it vital measurement. It's always advisable to have one. I always have one in my pocket. STAD object naming is the best screening for mild to moderate screening cases. Graph is the number of correct answers in the verbal test of 45 acute cases. The three orange bars of naming located in the middle of somewhat on the right. It's the best screening for moderate to mild cases. The ranking of correct answers percentage is as below. Pen is 67%, toothbrush is 55%, thermometer is 47%. Thermometer is rather difficult. In summary, this time we have looked at naming incorporated instead. The screening for word finding difficulty is essential, as it is a core symptom of aphasia. Object naming is the best screening for word finding difficulties, as visual mistakes can be minimized. The correct answer rate is from 67% to 47%, so the screening is suitable for light to moderate cases. It would be grateful if STAD can contribute to enhance screening accuracy. We are willing to share STAD for free of charge. Let's get it from STAD website. Name writing is something that is familiar to patients and is required quite frequently in their daily lives. In this video, I will discuss 3 advantages of STAD name writing. Let me first list out the advantage of having the patient write his or her own name. First, effective in screening for moderate to mild cases. Second, easy to connect to training. And third, easy to give feedback for improvement. This video will help you learn how to screen with STAD name writing and how to connect that to training and clinical practice. Now let's take a deeper look. Administration and scoring of STAD name writing. Have the patient write his or her name, and if both the first and last name are written, mark correct, otherwise wrong. It's a small detail, but have it written at the upper side of the paper so that all writing tasks will be fit in a single piece of A4 size paper with no jamming at the bottom. 3 advantages of name writing. Advantage 1. Effective in screening for moderate to mild cases. Graph is language test for 45 acute cases. Kanji and kana are unique to Japanese writing system, meaning in advance. The percentage of correct answer for both kanji and kana shown in orange is 48.9%. The orange bars are slightly on the right side of the graph, indicating that the test is suitable for screening for moderate to mild cases. Advantages 2. Easy to connect to training. When the patient is unable to write his or her name, or he or she is able to write but not as well as before the illness, it is easy to connect that to the patient next training, since one's own name is very much familiar to the person and writing it is often required in daily life, such as on government documents. Even during hospitalization, patients must sign consent forms. They often agree when told that they need to practice writing their names. The training may include such variations as spontaneous writing, copying, delayed copying, tracing, and so on. Advantage 3. Easy to give feedback for improvement. Before and later improvements can be shown easily because they are visibly recognizable through the letters the patient has written. Let me also talk about some disadvantages. First, demanding to patient. The task is too difficult for screening patients with severe cases. Second disadvantage is handling of personal information. Since the name is direct personal information, it must be administered with care. And third disadvantage is false positive. Even without aphasia, one may have difficulty writing his or her name. In summary, 3 advantages. First, effective in screening for moderate to mild cases. Second, easy to connect to training. And third, easy to give feedback for improvement. There is no reason your screening skills don't get better because you have kindly taken the time to watch this highly specialized content. And I'm very appreciate it. We are willing to share STAD for free of charge. Let's get it from STAD website. Thank you very much for your time. Hello SLPs, I'm Araki, a STAD developer. Whether you use STAD or not, my goal is to assist SLPs. Even without the STAD, it's still beneficial to dictate and don't count your chickens before they hatch. I will share more about this with you today. Does this patient have aphasia or not? In situations like this, you can use the following technique to determine that aphasia is likely not present. This is called diagnosis by exclusion. In this video, you will learn how to detect mild aphasia. Now let's take a closer look. Administration. I've got a question. How did you choose STAD dictation? The intent of the question must be, I would like to know the bias of your choice of stimulus words. The answer to this is I refer to the famous Japanese book Introduction to Higher Brain Dysfunction written by Yamadori. Dr. Yamadori is indeed great. 3 of the dictation we have incorporated. Their dictation power is incredible. There is 3 Japanese STAD dictation. First corn, second Christmas tree, and third Japanese proverb. 犬も歩けば棒に当たる. If a dog walks, it will hit a stick. It's very famous one in Japan. There are 3 English versions, first window, second Christmas tree, and third don't count your chickens before they hatch. Diagnosis by exclusion. The STAD dictation task is valuable identifying mild cases and ruling out the presence of aphasia. This is due to its status as the most challenging task within STAD, having only a 20% to 35.6% correct answer rate. Graph is percentage of correct answers for 45 acute cases. Corn is 35.6%, Christmas tree is 28.8%, proverb is 20%. As depicted in the graph, which is sorted by the percentage of correct answers, you can observe a bias towards the right side. A common pattern in mild cases is the ability to perform all other tasks in STAD with the exception of dictation. Hence, the dictation task can be highly effective in pinpointing mild aphasia. In particular, only 20% of respondents correctly answered the above question. If a patient can write this, their diagnosis of aphasia is ruled out. In other words, this task is useful in negating the presence of aphasia. False positives. This is a trade-off. Increasing the difficulty of task inevitably also increase the chances of non-aphasic individuals making errors. This pattern is called false positive. Errors in dictation can also arise due to factors such as attention disorders, unilateral spatial neglect, dementia, as well as illiteracy. In summary, 3 of STAD dictation tasks are effectively identifying mild cases. I'd be extremely pleased if they could play a role in detecting mild aphasia and excluding an aphasia diagnosis. Thank you for watching this far. See you next time.